presentation. Thank you. We are recording this presentation also. So welcome. Just a quick reminder also, if you just joined us, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and Tiffany will be fielding those questions to our presenters. And just real quick, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. You know, we can't do any of these events without our sponsors. And I just want to share on the screen just real quickly our platinum sponsors. These are our top sponsors that have supported us, and we're super excited. We do many presentations, we do networking events, and we cannot do it without these sponsors. So I'm very grateful for all of them. If you're interested in being a sponsor at any level, at the platinum, at the gold, bronze, education, or networking, please reach out to me, or please reach out to Jane, or any of you'll get a link at the end of this, maybe from Jane. We send out a thank you. Please reach out to us and we're happy to talk to you. Again, we cannot do this without our sponsors. So I want to just quit. I talked about housekeeping. So I want to turn this over to Lisa Kruse with the Council on Aging, and who's going to kick off our presentation. And then after that, Dennison Keller is with the Law Practices of Dennison Keller. If you were with us last week, he hosted our Cinco de Mayo event. So that both Lisa and Dennison are going to present together today. Okay, Lisa.
Thank you, Tracy. As Tracy said, I'm Lisa Kruse with Council on Aging, and I'm Dennison Keller and I are going to share some information about aging. I'm going to talk about Council on Aging and our programs and services and how they may help. And Dennison's going to demystify Medicaid a little bit for us. So Dennison, do you want to introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa and I have done these presentations before in the past, and it's always a lot of fun. I am the owner of the Law Practice of Dennison Keller. We do pretty much exclusively elder law. I've been practicing for 20 years. We do things a little bit differently than most firms in general. We realize it's always documents and finances and Medicaid and such which drive people in the door. But we think we're short-sighted if we don't do something to help our families address care issues, because those issues tend to head and peck you until your loved one passes away, long after the Medicaid or the documents are buttoned up. And that's why we have nurses and social workers who are actually on our staff, like Tracy, as a matter of fact, that help families navigate that care maze out there.
So let me go ahead and get started. Just to start off with a little bit of a statistic. Those living on Earth right now, those over the age of 65, actually outnumber children under the age of 5. And we really don't need the United Nations to tell us that people over 65 are the world's fastest growing age group. So some more numbers, if you're a numbers person, to paint the picture. In 2022, just a couple years ago, almost 60 million people were over the age of 65, and that equated to about just over 17% of the population. And that percentage is going to do nothing but increase. Many of those Americans were still in the workforce. Over 11 million of the Americans who are 65 and over. So that in itself creates its own set of challenges navigating the aging journey. Turning our attention to Ohio right now, 15,000 Ohioans turn 60 each month. That is astounding to me to know that quantity of people. More numbers. 3 million people are in our state over the age of 60, and that's about 25% of the population. So 1 in 4 Ohioans are over 60. You have 4 people in a room, chances are at least one of them is going to be over the age of 60. And almost 1.5 million Ohioans are providing care for another, to the tune of 21 billion with a B dollars in care annually. So I want to just briefly touch on area agencies on aging, of which Council on Aging is one. Area agencies on aging were started in the 60s through the signing of the Older Americans Act. And AAAs, as they're known, not to be confused with the driving people, AAAs are truly a connection to information and services, what's available for older adults and those with disabilities, also their caregivers. So as you can see from this map, there are 12 in Ohio. Council on Aging is in the bottom left corner of Ohio, so we are the yellow circle 1. There are 12 AAAs in Ohio and more than 600 throughout the country. So I would recommend, if you know of someone in another part of the state or another part of the country needing help with finding in-home care options, just finding information about the aging journey to begin with, wondering where to start, the AAA that serves that area is a good place to start. And you can find that using the Elder Care Locator, which is a government website, and that's eldercare.acl.gov. So let me talk a second about long-term care. Contrary to popular belief, long-term care is not simply a one-way trip to the nursing home. As a matter of fact, it is likely to be administered in a variety of places. And home is one of those places. That's what we're talking about today. Most long-term care is not medical in nature. Incidentally, some of this information may be quite familiar to you, but a refresher doesn't hurt. So anyway, most long-term care is not medical in nature. It's help with things that we need to do on a daily basis to live our lives. ADLs, activities of daily living, things such as bathing, transferring, going from the kitchen couch to the kitchen table to the living room, dressing, toileting. There are more complex independent living skills, IADLs, and they are things such as housework, laundry, preparing medications, shopping. For the most part, our programs and services are designed to meet the non-medical needs that someone may have, and also needs that aren't typically met through traditional insurance and benefit programs. There are many things to consider, as you all know, that to determine when long-term care might be needed. So unable to do housekeeping or the personal care. Perhaps there's a fall risk involved. I'm not going to read all these things to you. You can read for yourself, but just suffice it to say that there's a lot to consider. Our mission at Council on Aging is to enhance lives by assisting people to remain independent through a range of quality services. I call that our fancy mission. What that means is that we provide support that's necessary for people to stay home as they're aging and in their communities. Things like home delivered meals, transportation services, and a whole lot more. You can think of us as the front door. Maybe we don't have all the answers, and there's really no one size fits all. We're dealing with people's lives. So that means that there are a lot of different unique situations, different demographics. So even if we don't have a program that might be suitable for someone, what we do have are connections. We know what organizations might be able to help. We consider it part of our job to think outside the box, if you will, and see what might help in a certain situation? Have you considered that XYZ could help? Did you know that company ABC does such and such? So those connections are something that we can provide. So we're really the first stop on a quest for answers about aging. We have been an area agency on aging since 1974. We do cover the 5 counties of Southwest Ohio, and those are Butler, Claremont, Clinton, Hamilton, and Warren. I will point out that we are a nonprofit, not a government agency, and sometimes that's confusing to know. As far as our funding, 40% of our funding comes through county tax levies, and Medicaid programs make up 30% of our funding. The rest comes from state and federal funds, contributions from clients, and donations. So a little bit about what we've been up to, some more numbers. These are numbers from 2025. More than 27,000 people have been helped by Council on Aging to stay at home and be independent as they're living at home. Again, I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I will just point out a couple. We have provided more than 1.5 million hours of in-home care through our contracted providers and consumer-directed care. Our website is quite robust and it's full of a lot of information. More than 180,000 people have taken advantage of finding information on our website. And many, almost 200,000 medical or transportation trips have been provided for medical and senior center activities. So there's quite a lot that encompasses Council on Aging. Our typical client is over the age of 70, living alone, with trips in and out of the hospital or nursing home, living with multiple chronic health conditions, needing help with those ADLs, cooking, cleaning, bathing, shopping, low to modest income with out-of-pocket expenses for medical needs that are piling up maybe, and needing more help than can be reasonably provided by friends, neighbors, family, that sort of thing. We are, I will just interject right now, we are known as the payer of last resort. And what that means is if some other entity, such as insurance, perhaps the VA, if some other entity kicks in, if someone is eligible for a benefit through some other organization, then Council on Aging would not kick in. So that's how we maximize some of our funding. So let me just briefly talk about one of our programs is the Elderly Services Program, and it is for people who do not qualify for Medicaid. And let me just say, it is a taxpayer-funded program, and it really, let me explain, the people, it's for people who are not low income enough to qualify for Medicaid. However, personal 24/7 private care can be very, very expensive. So that creates a gap. And that gap is where the Elderly Services Program comes in. We have programs in Butler, Clinton, Hamilton, and Warren counties. The program in Claremont is run through Claremont Senior Services. So some things that are available to eligible individuals through our programs. Adult day, home care. I will point out that the third bullet on the third icon on the top row is a care manager. All COA clients come with a care manager, and care managers are the point of contact at Council on Aging. And they're also, I like to think of care managers as general contractors, someone to keep track of the services that are in place, the services that might be needed, how many hours a week a service might be in place for. So it's helpful to have someone with you navigating the aging journey, and that's the care manager. So I also want to talk a little bit about Fast Track Home. That is a program that is through Elderly Services Program, and it really helps people when they need it the most. And that's when they're transitioning from hospital to home. This program provides services such as homemaking, meals, transportation, and many times I know I've heard of doctors who have discharged to home as opposed to a nursing home because they know that these services are in place. Many times they can be in place before someone leaves the hospital for discharge. So the way it works is Council on Aging employees actually come to the hospital, and they go to the hospital bedside. They perform the assessment to determine eligibility, to determine what might be needed. So all that takes place while someone is in the hospital. And then when they arrive home, then these services can help prevent an accident and a hospital readmission. So that can be helpful. As far as eligibility for ESP, I will just breeze through this because you really don't need to know it. All you need to know is either you or someone else can call Council on Aging. We'll ask questions and go from there. But age 60 and above, needing help with activities of daily living. Income is not a qualification. However, it is a consideration. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We have programs for people who qualify for Medicaid and who do not qualify for Medicaid. Therefore, the income level is needed to know which program is most applicable for someone. And there might be a copayment according to, it's on a sliding scale, I believe, according to the income level. The care that we provide, it supplements, it doesn't replace anything that's already in place. And I've talked about the payer of last resort. So another program that we do have is Passport, and that does include people who are eligible for Medicaid. And quite frankly, without it, there would be more income eligible Ohioans forced prematurely into nursing homes. So it's a very, very helpful program. With that, Medicaid there's a lot going on with Medicaid. So now I will let Dennison tell you all about Medicaid. So Dennison, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa, for that breakdown of the COA services. And she kind of left off right at Passport, which is a Medicaid program. I always refer to there are several branches of Medicaid, right? There's, like, for example, there is Magi Medicaid, which is for the working poor. The areas of Medicaid we're going to focus on today are basically Medicaid for the age, blind, and disabled, called ABD Medicaid, and those are three branches of that, and that is Passport, which is Medicaid for the home, the assisted living waiver, which is Medicaid for assisted living facilities, and then there's nursing home Medicaid. So when we typically apply for a client, we're looking to get our client one of three different programs. To get through those processes, and they are onerous. We just had a powwow today with the Department of Job and Family Services, which where you apply for Medicaid. You've got to have a good, strong financial power of attorney. And frankly, most seniors don't. Every single client that comes into our place for initial consultation, we look to see, hey, let's see your financial power of attorney. Does it have all the levers of power that we need to get things done for you? And again, a good 95% of the POAs that we see just don't have those powers. They might have basic powers like the ability to pay bills and things like that, but that doesn't help you save assets in a Medicaid application. The powers that you want to look for, and that's the next slide, Lisa, are the following. Like number one, a gifting power. Uh, that means if Tracy is my daughter and I've got a financial power of attorney, I put in there, I give her the ability to give away my assets while I'm still alive. Well, that's a really dangerous power, is it not? Because Tracy, I'm sure you all know, is a very dishonest person, and she would pick me clean given the opportunity to do so. But the reason you have that power in there is because that helps you move assets, whether it's for trying to protect assets for the next generation or just trying to protect assets between spouses. And by the time this talk is through, hopefully you'll be able to see why that becomes really, really important. The power to handle retirement accounts. Sometimes you've got to cash those out and or turn those on to have income coming to you each month from them. But if your power of attorney doesn't specifically say retirement accounts, financial institutions won't deal with you. The power to create a trust, the power to self deal. Self dealing means, hey, my mom and dad might have two cars. They can only keep one in a Medicaid application. So I might want to buy their car from them. Well, if I'm their agent and I don't have the authority to self deal in the document, then I can't do that legally. The power to appoint an authorized representative for a Medicaid application. That's a huge deal because various county agencies will not deal with you as a power of attorney unless you have that ability to do so. And the power to change beneficiaries on accounts. Again, those are all potentially dangerous in their own way. So you don't just, you know, do a blank form and put those powers in there if you don't really, really trust your agent. But if you do trust your agent, and you think they won't take advantage of you or take advantage of these powers in a nefarious manner, then you do absolutely want to have those powers in your document. Again, most people just don't have that.
Dennison, we have a
So
question
yeah,
in the chat. If My Care Ohio waiver is the same thing as passport.
yes, it is. Yes, good question. Thank you. All right. So when you're talking Medicaid, there's an income test and there's an asset test. And we're going to talk about both of those today. And whether you're applying for uh, passport, assisted living waiver, or nursing home Medicaid, the rules are pretty much the same. There are a couple of variations, but pretty much they're the same. So let's talk about income. You cannot make in Ohio now. Next slide, please, Lisa. Any more than $2,982 a month in income and qualify for passport. Well, what's considered income? Income is Social Security, pension, and basically IRA distributions out of your IRA accounts. Those are all considered income. So, what happens if the combination of those, I make more than $2,982 a month? Well, in that case, you're not going to get on one of these programs unless you set up what is called a qualified income trust. And this is the bane of the existence for both elder law firms across Ohio as well as the Departments of Job and Family Services. Again, we just had this call with JFS today, the Zoom call with them. And like, we hate them as much as you do. But it is a mechanism that if your income is higher than that, you can actually get onto Medicaid, all right, if you set up one of these trusts. And this is what this looks like. So, all right, do I have anybody with their microphone on? Lisa, actually, Ann Burke, I see you. Put your microphone on. Ann, where do you bank?
U.S. Bank.
U.S. Bank. All right. So if this is Ann's U.S. bank account, and I'm going to say, and that you make the combination of Social Security and pension $3,982 a month. Okay. Well, that's $1,000 over the limit, right? So if I don't do anything, I can't qualify and for Medicaid. Now remember, this is just income. This isn't assets. This is income you're receiving on a monthly basis. All right. So what I have to do, I have to sign this trust, and it's like a 4-page state form. It's no big deal. And then Anne has to go and set up a QIT account, a different bank account. Okay. And then each month, Anne's got to transfer over $1,000 each month. That brings her regular income bank account down to $2,982. She is now not over the threshold, and by doing that, she will be eligible for Medicaid, at least on an income basis. And then with the money that's in these two accounts, she basically pays the nursing home each month because she has a copay. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. So by doing that, voila, you get qualified for Medicaid on income purposes. Now, I know it's going through your head. Why in the hell do I have to do that? Because the state says you have to do that. As I say over and over again, Medicaid is like a religion. If you are a follower of any religion, you have to check a degree of logic at the door when you walk into that place of worship, because that's why it's called faith. Medicaid's the same way. You bow at the altar of Medicaid, you do what they tell you to do, and if you do that, then you will get on Medicaid in terms of at least income purposes. Okay. Um, so yeah, you're doing right, Lisa. Go to the next slide if you could, please. Any questions about that before I move on? Because that's confusing to a lot of people. Okay. I don't see any there. All right. So now let's talk about assets. All right. Um, there's a big difference whether I am a single person or whether I'm a couple that's applying. Okay. And the asset requirement for a single person is you have to get down to $2,000. Okay. Now those are so-called countable assets. What are countable assets? Stocks, bonds, cash, whatever's in your checking account. Those are all called countable assets. Okay. I can own a house and still get on Medicaid. Okay. Um, it's a little bit different in Ohio versus Kentucky. I always say you should go ahead and sell it because it's going to be an expense to you, and you don't have the money to keep up the house. But you can get a house on while you're on Medicaid. In Kentucky, you have to get rid of it at 6 months. Okay. You can have a car because the presumption is that you need that for medical transport. And also what you can keep is IRAs. IRAs or 401ks, as long as they are in payout status. Now we'll talk about that here in a second. But payout status basically means that you're getting required minimum distributions each month out of those IRAs, and those come off the table. Now, for a single person, that's a bit of fool's gold because that IRA, at least in Ohio, will be subject to Medicaid estate recovery. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But at least at the application phase, it does come off the table. All right. So let's go on to the next slide if we could. If I'm a couple, things open up quite a bit. So a couple gets to keep about $162,000 plus a house, plus a car of unlimited value, plus qualified plans that are in payout status. Okay. But there is a big difference the way it's handled because you have what's called a snapshot date. And basically, it's the snapshot date is the day there's some variances of it, but the day you go into a nursing home, how much did you have? And Uncle Sam takes a snapshot date and he looks to see how much is in the bank, right? And if Uncle Sam sees I'm gonna rely on my Miami math, as I like to call it, $324,000 and some change. Then how much is the community spouse gets to keep? Community spouse is the spouse that's still in the community. Well, the community spouse, the healthier spouse, gets to keep that full 162 grand. Okay, but what if on that snapshot date the community spouse and the institutionalized spouse have a combined $62,000? How much the community spouse gets to keep then? The healthier spouse. Well, the way the rule is, it's half the assets up to this cap. So a half of this is $81,000, right? So that's how much the healthier spouse gets to keep. So you have to spend down to those appropriate levels in order to get on to Medicaid. And that is either the art or the science or the devil in details, however you want to phrase it, of Medicaid planning is how do you spend down those assets to get yourself qualified. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit.
And Dennison, we had one question
Yeah.
asking if this was similar to the monthly income allowance for a community
No,
spouse.
it is not. That's a whole different beast. And we'll talk about that a little bit here in a second. Okay. Um, so the monthly income allowance, the amount of income you get to keep. This is just assets, just at the application phase. Okay. So if we could go on to the next slide. So I mentioned IRAs, right? So and let me go ahead and clear my drawings here. Um, as long as the IRA is in payout status, then the IRAs come off the table if they're regular distributions. Okay. So for those of you who don't know how IRAs work, um, it's an incentive the government has set up for you to save for your retirement, and they don't tax money until you actually take it out of your IRA. And they don't force you to take anything out of your IRA until you hit 73 years old. Okay. So at 73, you have to receive what's called your required minimum distribution. And that is an amount each year that comes out based on the size of your IRA or 401k. It works the same way. And so what you do in a Medicaid situation is instead of taking yearly distributions, you take monthly distributions because it's easier to manage. And as long as you're doing that, that comes off the table, which is a really nice plum, especially if I've got a married couple, because when I die as a Medicaid recipient, I can leave that IRA to my spouse. So it's very helpful to spouses. But then the question always comes up, if you go to the next slide, please. Well, what about Roth IRAs? A lot of people have Roth IRAs. Those don't trigger required minimum distributions. Or what if I'm not 73 years old? What if I'm only 70? I don't have any required minimum distributions. Well, in that case, you still go ahead and you trigger some monthly payments. You can do a minimal amount. We usually do about $50 a month. But as long as you're getting something out of those assets come off the table. Again, it's much more beneficial if there's a couple as opposed to a single person, but that is a technique that we do use to take assets off the table. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. Remember I said for a single person, there's always a catch, right? And that is that IRAs for single individuals are subject to Medicaid estate recovery. All right. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. And the second catch is those distributions from your IRAs will contribute to the question for the next slide, please. What on earth is a patient liability? And the next slide, please. You think of a patient liability as a copay. So if you go to the nursing home, as a single person for sure, very often as a married person, you have a copay that you have to pay the nursing home. And the same goes for assisted living as well. You pay a portion of your income each month. And again, those IRA distributions are factored into that. And then what you are short, Medicaid comes and picks up the rest. So the government wants you to have some skin in the game before they will pay for your care. Okay. So how do they come in and arrive at this copay, this patient liability? Next slide, please. Well, again, it's handled differently if I'm single versus with whether I'm married. If I'm a single person, they take your gross income, again, Social Security, pensions, IRA distributions. They deduct out your health insurance premiums. So you get to keep your Medicare and you get to keep your supplemental insurance and that kind of stuff. They also let you get to keep $75 of your own income each month for spending cash. It's not very much, but hey, up until this year, it used to be 50, so you got a big increase there. And then the resulting figure is your copay. So again, gross income minus health insurance premiums minus $75. The resulting figure is your patient liability, your copay. So you pay that to the nursing home, Medicaid comes and picks up the rest. It's different if we're talking about couples. Couples, I'm not going to go through this formula, okay? And this is kind of what you were talking about before, Laura, on the monthly income allowance, okay? The monthly income allowance is an amount that the spouse that's still at home gets to keep of the nursing home spouse's income, okay? And it varies, all right? Usually, when it shakes down, the community spouse gets to live on anywhere from $3,300 to $3,500 a month. Okay? Because the government recognizes that this spouse is still in the community and they still have property taxes to make and they have house upkeep and they've got to eat and they've got their own medical expenses, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens is if I am married to Tracy and I'm in the nursing home and Tracy, after this calculation they figure out over here, if Tracy doesn't make it, and let's say they determine she gets to live on $3,300 a month. If Tracy only makes $1,000 a month in Social Security, then the government will allow her to keep $2,300 of my income each month to bring her up to this level. And that is what's called the monthly income allowance. Okay? If Tracy makes $2,000 a month on her own Social Security, her own pension, then she can keep $1,300 of mine each month, and the rest goes to the nursing home. All right, so that's how that works. Again, that's the formula that they use there on the left side. I'm not going to go through all that, but when it shakes down, it's almost invariably around $3,300 to $3,500. Okay. Now, if Tracy makes $5,000 a month on her own, that's fine. She can still be working. She can make $10,000 a month on her own. All right. It's just that all my income at the nursing home will go to the nursing home. And Medicaid will come and pick up the rest. Okay. Okay, I know I'm going through this fast, but it's kind of a compressed window, and I want to kind of get through everything. We do Medicaid presentations, and so if you want a little bit longer one. One-time Council on Aging, Lisa's colleagues asked me to do a 3-hour presentation on Medicaid, which we did, and exhausted everybody in the process. All right, so let's talk about spend down options. All right, we talked about income. And let's say I've got too many resources. What next? Okay. Well, if I'm a single person, I have options. And if I'm a married person, I have options. You can go on yeah, there you go. So if I'm a single person and I've got too much money, because remember, as a single person, I got to get down to $2,000, right? So I can buy a burial space. I can buy a prepaid irrevocable funeral contract. I can buy, I can fix up my house. I guess I could buy a car if I wanted to, right? Now, remember I said for a single person, it's probably better sell that house. Okay. But you might have the same carpet that you had in there in 1972. And you might not have central air. And so you can fix up the house in anticipation of selling it. Okay. If I'm a couple, I have a lot more options. They look similar, but they're actually broader. So we can go to the next slide, please, Lisa. For a couple, in terms of spending things down, again, burial space, prepaid, irrevocable funeral contracts are great. I can buy a new car for the spouse. We do this very frequently. Okay, it's really of unlimited value. So, if Laura Schmidt is my wife, and she's got the bad road ahead of having me in a nursing home and applying for Medicaid, well, she can make that road a little more fun to travel and buy herself a $100,000 Mercedes if she wants to. With a rag top and the plus leather seats and the whole thing. A spouse can buy a car and it not be counted for Medicaid purposes. If Laura wants to fix up the house and fix that kitchen that I was too cheap to buy all these years, or that sunroom or whatever, she can do that. She can buy a new house, for example. She's got a house that's not conducive to senior living. It's a bi-level. She's looking at the road ahead for herself, and she's got $500,000 to spend down, $600,000. Well, she can sink all that money into a new house, right? Put it in her name, and it won't come on the table in a Medicaid application, nor will it come on the table in a state recovery. Okay, so those are all options that a community spouse can do. A big one that a lot of families do. If you go to the next slide, please. Question, I'm sorry. I thought we had a question. I guess we don't. Okay, a big one that we do, and it's probably the go-to option for couples, is what's called a Medicaid compliant or Medicaid specific annuity. Okay. Now, if you don't know what an annuity is a financial product that is sold by an insurance company. Okay. And it's what makes an annuity is it turns an asset into a stream of income. Because you have to understand the reason a lot of couples go to this is once the spouse goes into the nursing home and they've decided mentally, okay, we're gonna go for Medicaid now. Then really it's the spend down is predicated on the last day of the month. And every last day of the month that they miss to hitting their spend down target costs them an additional $10,000 to $15,000. Well, if Laura wanted to buy a new house, it's going to take some time to sell her current house, buy a new house. And in the meantime, it's taken me 5 months and I've just shelled out $60,000 for me at the nursing home. So a lot of times they'll go to something that's more quick and doable. And that's why a lot of couples follow these Medicaid compliant annuities. How do these work? Well, remember I said that I'm going to keep using Laura just because I see her on my screen. If this is Laura and Dennison, right? The most Laura gets to keep is $162,000. Plus the house, plus the car, plus the IRAs, right? And let's just say that combined we've got $362,000 or $462,000. I'll say $462,000, right? So she's got to spend down here $300,000 to get me on Medicaid. Well, one of the things we can do is sink $300,000 into this annuity. Write a check to an annuity company for $300,000. And what the annuity company will do, will take the plop of cash and turn it into a stream of income. All right. And a lot of times we'll stretch these out over 36 months, 3 years. Okay. So my Miami math, but I cheat on my calculator here. And I've bought a $300,000 annuity, and I'm stretching that out over 36 months. That annuity is going to pay Laura $8,333 a month for the next 36 months. And which she adds to her own income that she's already getting, right? So the idea behind this is this counts as a spend down, believe it or not, right? So I take the asset, I turn it into income. Laura keeps receiving the income, and she can either live on it or she can save it. It's up to her, right? And so really, if she has enough money from her own Social Security and pension to live on, she's just banking this each month. And over the next 3 years, it goes right back up to the $300,000 that she started with. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, there are certain things that make it a Medicaid compliant annuity. For example, the state has to be named a remainder beneficiary to the extent it's paid for my care. So if Laura is really aged or really infirmed, probably not the best option. Okay. But for most couples, this becomes a really nice option for Medicaid planning. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. The question always comes up, can I give my money away? Right? And the answer is you can at your peril. Okay. Um, and the next slide, please. The rub is there's a 5-year look back for Medicaid purposes. All right. And so that means when you apply for Medicaid, 5 years of your bank statements are subject to review. And they ask you point blank, have you transferred assets for less than fair market value? And if the answer is yes, you have, you want to answer honestly, because if you answer dishonestly, you put yourself on the hook for Medicaid fraud, punishable by 2 years in prison. Okay. So if the answer is yes, they're going to be combing through your statements to see is how much gifting has there been, right? And the next slide, please. And the idea is the more money you've gifted away, the longer you're not going to be eligible for Medicaid. Okay. So I'm going to stay with Ohio because most of our folks here are Ohio. And I'm going to round here. The rule of thumb is for every $7,800 you've gifted away equals 1 month of Medicaid ineligibility. Okay. So let's say here in 2026, I give my daughter Tiffany 100 grand. Okay. And then I get down to my $2,000 and I apply for Medicaid. They'll divide the $7,800 into 100 grand, and that's going to be about 14. And that turns into 14 months that I'm not eligible for Medicaid. And if my nursing home bill is $12,000 a month, you can start to do the math there. That's not looking so good all of a sudden, right? But where they really get you is when do they start running this penalty? Okay. They don't start it until, as a single person, I'm down to $2,000. And I've actually applied for Medicaid. So what we see often families do is I might be sitting here in 2026 with $400,000. And I get an Alzheimer's diagnosis. I know I'm going to a facility. And so therefore I give Tiffany in 2026 this 100 grand. And so now I'm down to 300,000. I spend $100,000 on my care in 2027, which I will. So now I'm down to 200. 2028, I do the same. Now I'm down to 100. And now in 2029, I'm tapped out. Well, now I need help. Now I'm in a nursing home. So now I apply for Medicaid. Medicaid will then go back to this 2026 gift, do the divisor, and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Keller, you're on your own for the next 14 months. So that's why you've got to really be careful with gifting. Okay? If you try it, you better make damn sure that Tiffany still has that money and is in a position to give it back to you in case you don't make the 5 years. Okay. Next slide. An extension of that is don't do things that look like gifts that just aren't. Don't commingle your assets with them. Okay. Don't do what a lot of families do, where the daughter is buying everything and she buys everything on her own credit card, and the mom writes her a check for $1,000 a month to replenish her, repay her, da 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 da. To a Medicaid caseworker, that's just going to look like a gift in the year 2029. Yes, you can rebut the presumption, but man, you start to have to digging out receipts, and it's just a hot mess. So don't do that. All right. Get a credit card in your parents' name, make yourself a secondary card holder, put all the charges on their credit card, and you use your power of attorney authority to pay off the bill. Much more efficient and clean way to handle those transactions. All right. The question always comes up, well, can I give anything away without a penalty? The answer is yes, you can. You can buy burial spaces for your immediate family. Okay. Burial spaces include the gravesite, the crypt, the opening and closing. You can't buy the funeral, but you can basically be buried as one big happy family. And that's not considered a gift that will be penalized for Medicaid purposes. Another big thing that people don't realize is, next slide, please. You can gift between spouses, and those are exempt. So I can do this the day before I apply for Medicaid or 5 months after I apply for Medicaid. Transfers between spouses are exempt. And this is huge because of the Medicaid estate recovery issue. Next slide, please. Medicaid estate recovery means when the Medicaid spouse passes away, the state wants to get paid back for the care that they've given. This is for single people or for married people, okay? They wanted the taxpayer to be reimbursed. So some of the avenues they use is they might file a lien against your house. They might file a claim in probate court. They may go after your beneficiaries on your IRAs. They will do this, okay? But there's a huge exemption and loophole for couples. Next slide, please. And it's twofold. Number one, the state does not pursue Medicaid estate recovery until both spouses pass away. That's a huge deal, okay? So the second spouse has to die first. And furthermore, they only go after assets that were in the Medicaid recipient's name, the unhealthy spouse. So therefore, what becomes perfunctory planning in any couple's Medicaid case? You get everything out of the Medicaid spouse's name that you can, including the house. You transfer the stock accounts, you transfer the bank accounts. We want that Medicaid spouse to have less than $2,000 in their name. Okay? So that's a very big deal. All right? But as I said before, next slide, please. What do I need to pull off that transaction? I need a strong financial power of attorney that has gifting power and self-dealing power. So just because a spouse is a co-owner of the house does not mean she can transfer that house to her name. She has to have a power of attorney authority, and not just power of attorney authority that has gifting power and self-dealing power. And furthermore, the gifting power has to say, in excess, I can gift assets in excess of the annual gift tax exclusion amount, which is $19,000. If it doesn't have that specific language, she can't transfer the house to her name. Okay, so that's why these documents are so important. Next slide, please. If I'm doing some long-range planning, I can set up what is called a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. Okay, that is a special kind of trust. It is not the trust that most of you have if you have trust. If you have a trust, most people have revocable trust, meaning it's still your money. An irrevocable trust is kind of a complicated process to accomplish a basic goal, and that is getting assets out of your name. So I would set up a trust. The kids would be the beneficiaries of that trust. Next slide, please. I would move assets out of my name into that trust and let them sit there for 5 years. And the hope is you made it 5 years without applying for Medicaid. And if you have, whatever's in there is going to be protected. The reason it's in trust is if we don't make it the 5 years and we got to funnel money back to the parents, the trust distributes to the kids and the kids decide whether or not they're going to pay the parents' bill or not. But that requires some long-range planning. Okay. Again, next slide, please. What do I need to pull off that transaction? I need a power of attorney. I need the power to create a trust. I need the power to gift. If the child is doing it all, I need the self-dealing power. Okay. So that's why those documents are so important. It's more than just ethereal. Okay. But Medicaid is just one piece of the puzzle. It's not the sole answer. When you're choosing facilities and such, you got to find the right one and the quality of care. And do you want memory care? Because most memory care facilities do not accept Medicaid. Now, I'm not talking about nursing homes that have memory care. I'm talking about standalone memory care facilities and or assisted living facilities that have memory care units. Okay. Almost all of them do not accept Medicaid. Okay. And yet the quality of life, I think, is a little bit better in those than just a full-on nursing home care. Do I want a private room? Okay. Normally, when you go on to Medicaid, they will put you in with a roommate. And that's not the best quality of life at 85, 89 years old. If I've ever got a roommate I've never met in my life, and they're 3 feet away from me. Okay. There are certain kind of trusts you can set up called a pooled trust to bump you up into a private room while you're on Medicaid, but that's a consideration. And of course, is it possible just to stay at home? Sometimes that's the best answer. Sometimes the copay is so high for Passport, it's better just to go ahead and privately pay if your income is high enough and not go down the Medicaid route. And of course, I talked about in the beginning, you know, that's where the life care planning model that we practice on comes into play. We have a bank of nurses and social workers that are on our staff to help families make the decisions. And as we go and help families navigate this care maze, the role is kind of a double-barreled role. On one hand, the attorneys on one side of the screen, and you go on the next slide, Lisa, are handling those traditional legal roles, voting, probate, state recovery, the Medicaid renewals, maintaining eligibility, and figuring out what happens if the first spouse dies, the healthier spouse dies first. Meanwhile, the elder care coordinators are arranging care advocacy, doing home visits, care conferences. Whenever Passport and Council on Aging sends out a caregiver for the assessment, we go out there with them, chart reviews, and insurance issues. So this, we always take the position here that the aging of an elder can and should be planned for, not leave it to chance. And you can do that so long as you don't bury your head in the sand. All right. So I came in right under the wire at 12:59. So does anybody have any questions?
I didn't see any more on there. Thank you, Dennison. Every time I hear this presentation, I learn something new every single time. So I encourage you from Lisa and from Dennison. So I want to thank both of you for an excellent presentation. Any final questions before we wrap up? Again, you can look for COA's programs at the helpforseniors.org. Those are online. There are numbers there if you don't know them. The main number to call, and you'll connect you with someone from one of the programs that Lisa talked about. You can also go to their website. So just want to wrap up today. Want to thank everybody. You will be receiving an email from us, from APA, we appreciate that. There will be contact information. If you could respond back to that if you have any questions. And then we have upcoming events. In June, we have an estate transition and aging journey, which is going to be really good. Our fun Christmas in July networking event, and then Coffee with Congress is always very well received. So we hope to see you at those events. So again, thank you, Dennison. Thank you, Lisa, and thank everybody for attending today. We have recorded this presentation, so it will be available also for you to listen to it again. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks. Enjoy the day.